You ever see a game with mechanics that you're familiar with, but that then applies a twist to be unique, but makes you think, man, I don't know if I'm gonna like that anymore, only then wind up trying it and looking like that bird eating the cracker meme, you know the one. Well, that was me with today's game, Dark Cards of Candlewood. Stop me if you heard this one before, roguelite, turn-based deck building game. While I've played quite a few of these in my time, this one definitely makes its unique style worthwhile. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including my coverage of various different turn-based indie games, roguelite or otherwise, such as Dark Cards of Candlewood, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. And also, huge shout out, this video is actually sponsored by Dark Cards of Candlewood. When they reached out to me and my team asking if it was a game that I would be interested in checking out, the fact that it was something that looked different but in a way that I wasn't sure if I would like actually made me very intrigued. So I said sure, I'd be happy to check it out, and boy am I glad that I did, because this is a really interesting way of handling a game in a genre that has very quickly become very oversaturated, and I think it's actually going to stand out pretty dang well. So, as always, yes, this is a sponsored video, but all thoughts within are my own. I'm going to give an overview of the game, my impressions of it, how it works, and whether I think you guys should check it out or not. So what even is Dark Cards of Candlewood? Well, as mentioned, it is a deck-building roguelite that takes that familiar concept and adds a healthy dose of JRPG to the mix, as well as a major shakeup of the moment-to-moment gameplay compared to pretty much any other game I've seen in the genre. You start out as an intrepid pirate turned adventurer who's been tasked with paying off the debt built up by your captain after she burns down the tavern in a local coastal town you find yourself in, which is definitely an interesting story setup. No idea where she is, but now you're saddled with the burden, so great, isn't that awesome? To do this, you're sent on expeditions where you and your trusty deck of cards, of course, will battle through goblins, wolves, dark elves, etc. to find treasure that you can then bring back and put towards your debt and rebuilding the tavern. Hilarity, mystery, sometimes rage if you don't get good draws, and tactical combat ensue as you build up a library of cards, change classes, and add party members, everything that you would probably expect. As you can see here, Candlewood has a simple but lovely pixel style, and is not shy about its references to other JRPGs and card games, which I always enjoy as a lover of both of those things. Its biggest gameplay feature, and the tweak that made me really unsure if I would like it or not until I got my hands on it, is that at baseline, you only draw 2 cards a turn, and the faster you play, the more momentum you build to earn bonus turns. This means that staying on your toes and playing swiftly but well rewards you immensely. It's pretty much vital, actually. And the small amount of cards that you have to work with both in your deck and in each turn's hand really actually encourages that and is part of what makes the moment-to-moment gameplay feel so good. I really did not know what to expect when I first saw this system, when I was first looking at the game when they approached us. But once I got rolling with it, I fell in love, and the game becomes extremely snappy very quickly. When you try the game for yourself, especially once you pick up at least one other party member, which is when I think the game really starts to shine, I expect that your experience will be largely the same if you're into this type of game in the first place. All that said, however, do keep in mind that this version of the game that I played is only a demo version, which you should also have available to you now by the time this video is published. So do expect some missing assets, different or updated mechanics compared to the eventual full release, all that sort of thing. With all that said, I do need to provide some more detail, don't I? So let's do that. Visually, as I mentioned, the game has a really nice pixel art style, which you'd probably expect from an indie roguelite. To me, it smacks the most of kind of like pixel art Darkest Dungeon mixed with the Pokemon TCG Game Boy game, for those old heads who remember that absolute classic bangers. Probably not that many of you in the audience nowadays, but God, I love that game so much. And of course, your old school Final Fantasies, SNES, JRPG style look, right? And the UI in particular is very readable and comfortable to start getting into, which when you have as many different things going on as you do when you're trying to be strategic, but also play quickly and read cards and tell what the enemy's doing, tell what you're doing, very important that you have a UI that isn't going to get in your way with that. It would get very frustrating if it did. As far as the music and the sound effects are concerned, this is probably the least standout aspect of the game to me, but there's also nothing wrong with it, which is very important. It's simple, it's effective, you don't have any grating sounds or overbearing and repetitive OST, at least in my opinion. Of course, your mileage may vary, but it suits the game well, and there's a certain dark atmosphere to it that I think is very fitting given some of the story aspects that we're going to talk about right now. Now, the story isn't super present in the demo, but there's clearly things planned, and the setup for it is there. As it stands, we play as Fur, a pirate who is attacked and sunk off the coast of Candlewood alongside your captain. Now, while you do wash up on the shores of Candlewood, this might not be super fortunate for you, actually, as the game's opening crawl suggests that the town, or something or someone in it, is a place best left forgotten, and the sort of washed out, almost dead gray appearance of the townsfolk in comparison to your playable party, who are much more colorful, makes me wonder about that even more. Maybe this is just a storytelling choice, I'm not really sure, but it's definitely something I took notice of as soon as I started meeting some of the townsfolk. It's a detail I'm looking very much forward to in the full release, seeing what there is to actually learn about what is going on here and why it's apparently such a problem that we've now stumbled across this place. Whatever that story may be, though, again, it does feel like it's going to suit the very moody atmosphere that the game has. Again, it's called the Dark Cards of Candlewood, so you can expect a little bit of gloom, low light, sort of creepy atmosphere, and that's always the type of thing that I go for, especially if you've got some nautical themes and things like that, being a former pirate and all that. Good stuff. Love a good seaside, creepy mystery town, right? However, now we got to talk about the mechanics, and of course, as you can probably imagine, as I did mention, this is by far going to be the biggest chunk of the video, as there's a lot to discuss here. While this is only a demo version of the game, there is still a ton of different cards and mechanics that you're going to be able to play around with and start building with as you progress further into the demo. And that's good because runs can be over pretty snappy-like. As long as you're not getting stuck on a particularly difficult fight where there's a lot of stacking buffs and debuffs and armor, but it's not generally what you should expect to be running into. I had maybe 10-15 minutes per run, maybe a little bit longer into like the 20-25-ish once I started to get into some higher difficulty things, but of course, depending on what your build is and all that type of stuff, your mileage will very, very heavily vary. That's before you even start turning up animation speeds and the like, so you can probably get this game running real quick once you know what you're doing. Cards, as you would expect, start off fairly simple, but then scale up in complexity over time, with most of your deck being comprised of your basic colorless or classless cards, and then expanding out into warrior, rogue, mage, druid, bard, etc., etc. Every card has an energy cost associated with it, typically somewhere in between 0 and 3, and most are either going to deal damage, provide you armor, or start applying different status effects and skills. As you start to get into some of the specific class cards, you'll find things that can equip items, which doesn't actually affect your character directly, but actually adds other different cards associated with what you equipped to your deck, so you can then subsequently draw them and apply other different effects or get big special attacks, which I think is a fun way of doing a little bit of a unique twist on equipment without necessarily having to have a whole equipment system. Very cool. You'll find cards that key off of other effects that you can activate. Rogue, for example, unsurprisingly, has a stealth mechanic with some of its cards that allows it to get bonus effects if it hasn't been attacked in the previous turn. You can see how this can scale very quickly, especially once you get into other classes that are actually multi-classes of the starting ones. Again, something we'll talk about when we go deeper into the classes on their own. Really, if you're familiar with any sort of roguelite deck builder, you're going to feel right at home with the way most of these cards work, until you get into a particular type of mechanic that I think is one of the most compelling aspects of Dark Cards of Candlewood, which is the start, link, and break mechanic. Anyone who's ever played Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh!, you'll be familiar with ideas such as chain or the stack, and you kind of have a similar-ish thing going on here in Dark Cards, but instead what it allows you to do is continue playing cards beyond when your turn would normally end. So let me explain. A card that says start can be played as your first action of the turn and then allow you to play another card after that. If you then find yourself with a link card in hand, you can play that, and that will continue this chain of actions, allowing you to play more and more cards until you run out of energy or run out of link, or use a card that applies break. Break is the end state of any given chain of actions and is considered the status that you get if you just play a card that doesn't have link that breaks the chain, as well as, again, some cards having break as an innate effect, presumably to prevent there from being absolutely insane endless combos with certain setups. What's nice, though, is that a lot of the cards that do break a combo will also have a bonus effect if you do use them as the last card. For example, the card Knight's Shield, a warrior card, is a 0 energy card that gives you 3 block, but if you use it as the final step in a chain and as such break that chain with it, you also get 3 HP back. So you can probably start to see, especially if you're like a TCG competitive card game type minded person, how you can start to put things together, especially because you only have 8 cards in your deck to start with. You can get very specific and very intentional with the way you have a deck set up to give a given character a given play style. Of course, as mentioned, there are a ton of different types of cards and effects that can modify this, things that the enemy can do to disrupt your plan, and just plain out bad draws that will always make sure that you need to stay on your toes to keep things rolling here. But I really like the way this system functions, and it's part of why I think having only 2 cards at baseline in a hand per turn is actually great, because it shows you very clearly what options you have on the table, so you can just pick a card, play it, keep your link going, and essentially be playing with your whole deck over the course of a couple of turns. Add on to this the momentum mechanic, which is actually a bar you can see here on screen that fills up over time as you play cards, but also drains over time as you sit there and think about what you're doing and are not playing cards, and things can get very, very frantic. Momentum is huge because once the bar is filled, it'll stay filled, and you can choose on any of your character's turns to click it. Once you do, that character will be guaranteed to have another turn after the current turn. So you can either just play a single card and just hope that you draw into something better with your new turn, or you can play through a whole huge chained linked together combo and then get another turn to do it all over again, so long as you have the energy that you need. However, the limiting factor behind all of this is the aforementioned energy system, and this is a particularly interesting one. As you would expect, you get energy each turn, like a mana system in Hearthstone, Magic, whatever, the things that you would normally expect. However, you can also choose to discard a card, typically using your whole turn, although again, there's always exceptions, to gain 2 energy on top of the energy that you would have gained normally over the course of a turn. This means that there will be times where you would rather just pitch a card and sacrifice a turn to set up for a huge combo later, especially if you've got momentum built up. And certain cards even lean into this by giving you special effects when you do choose to discard them. There's a lot of thought that's clearly been put into how the resources in this game mix together and how you're going to need to manipulate them to get the best effect, the best bang for your buck. And again, it made for a really engaging gameplay loop once I kind of figured things out and again got my party built up. Because you think about it, you can have a party of 3 in any given engagement. So between each character, that's 8 cards, so you're not dealing with a deck of 8, you're actually functionally dealing with a deck of 24, just partitioned out between different roles and classes. And that's before, again, you get into anything that adds extra cards to the deck. So you will have a lot of versatility per run, which I really, really enjoy, especially since there's more characters and classes than you can take at one time in any given run. Of course, cards are not the only things that are going to influence what you're able to do during a run. You'll have consumable items that will either be able to put new cards in your deck, or provide healing, or debuff enemies, all the things that you would expect, as well as relics and power-ups that you'll be able to find over the course of a run that'll let you do anything from poisoning every enemy on the board at the start of the fight, to giving you a guaranteed selection of certain types of cards when it activates, so you can build around that and know it's something you'll always have available to you regardless of what cards you have in your deck and what you draw, which is awesome. Now, though we've skirted around it enough, we definitely need to talk about your home base and your meta progression, and then the different like leveling and character classes and all that fun stuff, because it's going to be what really sets the tone for what each of your expeditions is going to look like. Back in town, your home base, you'll have a variety of different options available to you. The town hall, where you're presumably going to get some major story events. You really only have one thing that happens there at the beginning of the demo, and then it's just closed off for the rest of the time. The library, where you're going to be able to go and look and see what all cards you have available, browse through what you can use, as well as potentially borrow particular cards. This is where you're going to be able to set a card, at least at this point in the demo, to bring with you into any given run. This is a lot of like your relics and things that'll trigger at the start of the game. You'll have the shop, where you can go and buy card packs, something you love to see for anyone who enjoys some good trading cards. You'll be able to buy refills for these whenever you want, so long as you have the gold. And if you've cleaned out the whole stock of the packs that are available before you restock, it will be the cheapest. As you progress into the demo, you'll also be given the opportunity to buy singles. They are very expensive. I didn't really feel the need to make too much use of this during my time in the demo, but again, once you get into the full game, you probably have a lot more cards that you can access. I imagine this is going to get much more useful for getting getting particular builds online. The guild hall is where you can go and look at all of your characters, level them up, set their decks. We'll talk about that in a sec. And then the blacksmith is where you're able to go and actually upgrade your cards. Right now, this is very simple. You can just get a +1 upgrade by applying multiple copies of the card to one card. Then, of course, there's the stables. The stables are really simple. It's just where you're going to choose where you're going. You get a lovely little, very cute pixel art map. There's only one area that you can expedition through currently, the forest outskirts, but there will be many more once the full game comes out. Now, the big one to talk about here, and the one that we did skip over, is, of course, the guild hall, as this is where you're going to be leveling up your characters. Leveling isn't particularly complicated in this, but each time you level, you'll be given the choice to level up your health, or your strength, your agility, or your turn timer, or your magic, which raises your max energy. While those are the stats that will be impacted here, the thing that's most interesting is what stats you choose to level actually dictates what class your character is. So someone who levels nothing but strength will be a warrior, but someone who takes some points in, say, strength and agility will actually wind up becoming a ranger. I really enjoy this as a system. Again, it's very simple, but I think that's good because you're able to retrain your characters at any time that you're at base, so you can really experiment with a lot of different party combinations. What does a team of all rangers look like? I don't really know. I mean, you'd have a bunch of warrior cards, and you'd have a bunch of rogue cards, but then you'd also have unique ranger cards, so even if you have a full team of the same, you could have a lot of different flexibility in what they're able to do, which I find very compelling. And what's nice is, it's not to say that the multi-class characters are necessarily any better than the dedicated single-class characters. When I cleared the demo, I was using a warrior and a rogue as well as a bard, and the warrior and the rogue, that's just your straight up, like, you went all strength or you went all agility, and there's still a ton of flexibility in what those types of characters are able to do. To say nothing of the fact that, yeah, as you level, you are getting better in certain stats. My full-out rogue is very quick, and my full-out warrior is very tough, as you would expect them to be. And I can see there being a lot of flexibility in what you're able to do with your characters in the full game thanks to this class system, without it being something you're going to be tinkering with for hours at a time, trying to craft your perfect build like you're playing Path of Exile or something. Like, it's not anything that intense, and that's good. Sometimes you don't want things to be super crazy intense. All told, I really am surprised by how much I enjoyed Dark Cards of Candlewood. It's one of those games that very easily could have just passed me by in the unending sea of games that now exist on Steam and in the greater gaming ecosystem writ large, and that would have been a terrible shame because it is so much fun and it is so engaging. I'm very eager to see what comes with the full release of the game, and I highly encourage you all to check out this demo for yourself. If you're into strategy, tactics, roguelikes, roguelites, card games, any of the above, there's probably going to be something here for you. With all that said, though, I'm going to wrap this one up here. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you once again to the devs at Dark Cards of Candlewood for sponsoring the video. I'm really happy that I got to check out your game, and I wish you nothing but the best as you go forward in completing the rest of it and publishing it for all of us to enjoy. And I hope if any of you check it out, that you enjoy it just as much as I did. Once the full game comes out, maybe I'll cover it some more on the channel. If you guys would like to see that, do please let me know in the comments. And if you check the game out for yourself, let me know what your impressions of it are as well. That's enough rambling from me, though. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there, everybody. And remember, be good to each other, y'all. Bye now.